specifically with black voters. It's not all black voters, it's younger black voters, and particularly younger black men. I discovered this when I got off a plane at JFK when two baggage handlers came over to me to tell me that I don't get it, that they're going to vote for Donald Trump because they think they are being victimized the same way that he is. In some of these votes that have left Joe Biden over the last 4 years, it's because of Biden's weakness. In this case, young black men see in Donald Trump the same kind of oppression, the same kind of persecution, the idea that Trump is a victim and they feel victimized by the system. And so they're endorsing Trump because of the fight that he's having. And I actually think it's possible that among black voters, male black voters under age 40, that even a third of them could end up with Trump in the fall.
The Democrats and liberal and Marxist plan to drive Jesus out of the black community to replace the black man with the government is failing. And it's failing because they're seeing that more and more young people, especially young black men, are going to vote for Donald Trump in this upcoming election.
Look at 2024. Biden still leads among black voters over Donald Trump, 69% in an average of polls. But look at this number for Donald Trump, 22%. Where was Donald Trump at this point 4 years ago in the polls? He was just at 9% of the vote. So he's seen more than a doubling in his support among African Americans. This margin, which was in the 70s just 4 years ago, look at where it is now, 69 minus 22. That puts it in the 40s. My goodness gracious. If this held through the general election, obviously we're still months away, this would be by far the best performance for a Republican candidate among black voters in a generation, 2 generations, probably since 1960 and Richard Nixon against John F. Kennedy. That's how long we're really talking about when we're looking at this margin here. This could be a truly historic margin. It's quite a troubling sign for the Biden campaign, Sarah.
So where is Biden weakest among black voters? When you look at this number, who are they?
Yeah, who are these voters? And let's break it down by age, because I really think this gives you a good insight into what's exactly cooking here. Take a look here. If you look among black voters age 50 and over, you see that Joe Biden has a very substantial lead here. Look at this, 82% to 8%. This lead is still in the 70s. This looks a lot like what we saw in the overall polling back in 2020. But look at voters under the age of 50. Look here, Donald Trump is pulling 25% of that vote. Joe Biden is at just 62% of this vote. This lead, Sarah, this lead is south of 40 percentage points. This is historic. This is what a lot of folks have been talking about, that Joe Biden has a specific problem among younger black voters. And that is exactly what's showing up right here. And this is, I think, a lot of the reason why you're going to see Biden focusing more on black voters, why you're seeing Jim Clyburn go out there. Don't be surprised if they go to more colleges, because the fact of the matter is older black voters still really much like Joe Biden. It's these younger black voters who very much are turning on him and being much more supportive of Donald Trump than they were 4 years ago.
Of course, this is not the only thing that Joe Biden has to worry about, although these numbers look pretty dire and very different than they did in the last election. So give us some sense of what else he needs to be thinking about here.
Right. You know, when we talk about elections, we talk about two things. We talk about persuasion, which is you're seeing here with these changing margins, but we also talk about turnout. What's going on in turnout? Certain to vote. Black voters absolutely certain to vote. This is according to Washington Post Ipsos. If you look 4 years ago, 83% of black voters said they were absolutely certain to vote. Look where that number is now. It's 73%. So it's not just that Joe Biden's getting less juice out of the margins. He might have fewer black voters turning out and providing less support for him because they're going to be a smaller portion of the electorate.
One of the big things that the candidates have to worry about is whether people stay home, and that can be a huge factor.
And this is what this is saying may very well happen.
Harry?
Now, this is frightening and stunning to the liberal media, as you saw with that data analyst at CNN going through the polls. They can't believe all the work they've done to sabotage the black community, all of the work they've done to program young black people into thinking that they are oppressed, that this system is against them, to use them to usher in their revolution, to paint them as victims in America. How dare they decide to vote for Donald Trump, the person that they hate the most, the person they see as the one to stop their agenda, the person that they've painted as a racist, the person they've painted as a sexist. How dare these young black people? Don't they understand? They're just misinformed. What they don't understand is that their plan to infiltrate the black community, to remove the traditional black family, to remove biblical values from the black community has backfired on them. And has backfired because they thought by using the church plants, the traditional black pastors, they'll be able to ensure that they keep black people in their grips forever. That the Democratic Party will always be the party of black people. But you realize that that plan is crumbling. That's why they are replacing black people with these folks from other countries. That's why they want the open border policy. And some Republicans want it too for the free labor. But the Democrats want it because they need another voting bloc. Because they realize their plan is backfiring. And it's backfiring because, unfortunately, and this is a detriment of the work they've done, they've been successful at driving out in inner cities the value of a relationship with God. They've been successful in implementing a socialistic, communistic environment in the inner city. But what they don't realize is that when they did that, it has reverberated and it has caused a lot of young black people, number one, to be disillusioned with the church, which is not a good thing, but it's part of the agenda that they had. And when black people have become disillusioned with the church, instead of them flocking and following along the plan of the Democratic Party, of the Marxist agenda, by continuing to support Democratic agendas, the depopulation agenda, the abortion agenda, the death agenda that they have in the black community, a lot of young black folks, especially a lot of young black men, are recognizing what has been happening. So they, instead of going to these traditional churches where they've been told over and over and over again that they're victims, they are instead, with all the access they have to social media, to people online, to the truth that is available online, as well as access to go to other areas, they're recognizing the lies of the Democratic Party. And that is backfiring them because this agenda has been in place for over 100 years.
As communism hastens to complete the encirclement of the last bastion of capitalism. And what of the United States? How goes the battle in the land of the free and the home of the brave? The communist plan for the conquest of the United States was explained to the American comrades by Moscow's agent Joseph Pogany. Pogany was sent to this country by Stalin for the specific purpose of laying the groundwork for the agitation that would eventually develop into a Negro revolutionary movement. American Negro Problems was published in 1928 by Joseph Pogany using the alias John Pepper and carried the official communist line for America.
The Workers' Communist Party of America, in its fight against imperialism, must recognize clearly the tremendous revolutionary possibilities of the liberation movement of the Negro people. The Black Belt of the South, with its starving and pauperized Negro farmers and Negro agricultural working masses, with its Jim Crowism, its semi-feudal status, and its political system still bearing the earmarks of the period of slavery, constitutes virtually a colony within the body of the United States of America. The Workers' Communist Party of America puts forward correctly as its central slogan, abolition of the whole system of race discrimination, full racial, social, and political equality for the Negro people. But it is necessary to supplement the struggle for the full racial, social, and political equality of the Negroes with a struggle for their right of national self-determination. Self-determination means the right to establish their own state, to erect their own government if they choose to do so.
Does this sound familiar to the white supremacist, victim, oppressor, oppressed narrative that has been pushed by those who want to see an overthrow of the American system, of the capitalistic system? Sounds very familiar. This stuff didn't just come out of the blue. This has been in place and has been percolating for a long, long time.
In 1934, the communist writers James W. Ford and James S. Allen further defined the Soviet Negro Republic.
The actual extent of this new republic would in all probability be approximately the present area in which the Negroes constitute the majority of the population. In other words, it would be approximately the present plantation area. It would be certain to include such cities as Richmond and Norfolk, Virginia, Columbia and Charleston, South Carolina, Atlanta, Augusta, Savannah, and Macon, Georgia, Montgomery, Alabama, New Orleans and Shreveport, Louisiana, Little Rock, Arkansas, and Memphis, Tennessee.
These cities, and the cities which lie within their spheres of influence, became known in communist writings as the Black Belt of the South, and were to constitute the nucleus of a future Soviet republic. At the National Convention of the American Communist Party, held in New York City in June of 1940, James Ford, the Communist Party candidate for the Vice Presidency of the United States, said,
"For the Negro in the South, my people, the Negro people of America, have in the Communist Party their best defender, the unfailing champion of their cause. I accept its nomination for Vice President of the United States."
By this time, the communist champions of the Negro race had hidden the revolutionary ideas and slogans for a Soviet Negro Republic behind the humanitarian banners of jobs, security, civil rights, and peace.
Very, very interesting. Now, I'm not here to say that all black people during this time were open to the message of communism, but they found a very ripe community because of all the things that were going on with discrimination and Jim Crow and those kind of things, because there was true discrimination going on. But not everybody in the black community was open to it. So they had to come up with different ways to accomplish their agenda.
These humanistic issues were to provide the friction necessary to divide the American people and lay the groundwork for revolution.
I am Leonard Patterson. When I was a young man, only 23 years old, I joined the Communist Party. I was a member of the National Executive Committee of the American Young Communist League. In 1930, I was the official communist candidate for election to New York State Assembly. I knew Gus Hall and other top-ranking American communists very well because I trained with them at the Lenin University in Moscow. I joined the party because I honestly thought the communists were trying to help American Negroes. I broke away from the party when it became clear to me what the communists were really up to was to use the Negro people in this country as cannon fodder in a violent and bloody revolution aimed at the establishment of the American Soviet dictatorship.
When I mentioned that the Communist Party and the Marxists have the long march through the institutions, this is what I'm talking about. They had a long-term plan and they're executing it to the T. Why do you think you're seeing all these protests on college campuses? This is not just a spur-of-the-moment thing. These seeds have been planted for generations. And like you just heard, they've planted these seeds in the black community to use black people as cannon fodder, as the useful idiots to usher in their revolution. But it's backfiring on them because young black people are rejecting this notion. Young black people are rejecting the notion that they are victims. They are. And they're turning their attention to a man that the Marxists and the communists and the liberals hate because they see him as the only politician that cannot be bought. And so therefore their plan is backfiring. And so now they're scrambling to adjust. We as believers have to make sure we continue to pray and continue to hope that our brethren, their eyes are open to the truth as to what is going on, to get out of these traditional black churches by and large that are run by these church plants that are puppets of the communists and the Marxists. Because we're not victims. We are empowered for greatness.